Thanks for listening to today's lesson. The lesson is studying with tinted glasses. In our reading yesterday, we read about an event that's troublesome to some people. You look in Matthew, the 24th chapter, and it is a passage that is oftentimes referred to. And you find, for example, in verse 3, Jesus' disciples are asking him after he pointed to the temple and talking about the destruction of it. He said, "When shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming, the end of the world?" Well, people look at that and they read, and for example, in verse 5, many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. Verse 6, wars, rumors of wars. You find in verse 7, nation rising against nation, famines, pestilence, earthquakes in diverse places. You look at that and people say, well, that's now. You look at that. These things are happening right now. That means that Jesus is about to come. Well, bit of a problem. You look in verse 16, in reference to that, he says, let them that be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let them which are on the housetop come not down to take anything out of his house. Neither let them which are in the field return back to take his clothes. Woe to them that are with child, to them that give suck in those days. Pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. You look at it and you think, wait a minute. How did I miss that? Whenever I was in school, there was a man who was a former Catholic priest who had come to the knowledge of the truth of God's word. And he pointed out that the problem was that individuals oftentimes read and study with tinted glasses. In other words, they have something that filters it the way they want to hear it. And that's what people do in Matthew 24. Here are the signs of his coming. But how do you explain then in verse 16, it says those in Judea? You see, it's a local event that he is speaking of. You find also, he says, if you're on the housetop, don't stop to take anything out. If you're in the field, don't go back to take your clothes. If you're with child, woe unto you. I mean, why would that be? If Jesus is coming, what would any of those things matter? And why would you flee to the mountains? You're going to hide from Jesus? You see, it's obvious that it is a local event. As a matter of fact, in verse 15, he says, you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place. If you go over to the book of Luke, the 21st chapter, in verse 20, you find that's in reference to Jerusalem being compassed about with armies, AD 70. You see, this is the destruction of Jerusalem, the time at which the temple was destroyed in AD 70. But then you read on down, and in verse 35 and 36, he points out, heaven and earth shall pass away, my word shall not pass away. And then in verse 36, he makes a transition, but of that day. Now, before that, he's spoken of these things as a local event. Then in verse 36, of that day and hour knoweth no man, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. As in the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. As in the days that were before the flood, when they are eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered in. No one knew until the flood came. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. You see, unless Jesus got a little bit of schizophrenic there, where he says at first, here are the signs, and then he turns around and says, no, there are no signs, he's obviously speaking of two different events. The first, a local event, as you see. The second, his coming, the coming of the Son of Man. And he says, nobody knows. And therefore, be ready. And he goes into the preparation parables. Sometimes we need to make sure that we don't go to the Bible with a preconceived idea. Rather, we study to see what it is. Don't study with tinted glasses. Thanks for listening, and you have a great day. Thank you again for joining us in this Bible study. We remind you, if you'd like to follow along in our daily Bible reading, the link below in the description of this video will give you the PDF so you can read right along with us. If you have any other questions or if you'd like information on a Bible study, contact us with the information provided on the screen before you.